And here he is, my good friend, John Rhatigan of the Marine Machinery Association, the CEO himself. John, how are you? And welcome.
Great, Gene. How about yourself?
We're doing well. So glad you could be with us. For those that don't know you, I've known you for several years now. I don't know the exact number, but you are a stalwart in the marine industry, in the defense industry writ large. But maybe you could just tell the audience what it is that you do, and then we're going to back up a little bit and talk about how did you get there?
All right. So what I do is I am the chairman of the Marine Machinery Association, and we're a group of about 80 to 100 companies. It varies every couple of months depending on consolidations, that all basically supply equipment to the U.S. Navy, Merchant Marine, Coast Guard, and actually a bunch of foreign military sales. We specialize in hull mechanical and electrical equipment. We have everything from exotic raw materials to forgings to castings to main engines, deck equipment, and everything in between that helps run a Navy ship. We've been around 42 years. We were founded basically by a bunch of ex-Navy lawyers sitting around smoking cigarettes, trying to figure out how to solve the Navy's problems. One of the first things they took on was actually bootleg parts. And we basically have, for 42 years, have dealt with the same thing. We're trying to make cooperation between supplier base, the shipyards, and the final customers be as seamless as possible. You know, there's always tons of terms and conditions and, you know, implications from Congress. There's, you know, the EPA, there's a lot of things that impact our industry. We try to soften the blow. You know, a lot of times it's very tough for a small business to survive in the Department of Defense world. We try to give them a helping hand, mostly try to get them to team up with a bigger player that may already have the contracts people, the terms and conditions folks, you know, the supply base in place. And we try to get it so that smaller businesses can play in this arena and succeed.
John, I want to dig into the industrial base implications, but first let's back up and talk about how did you get to this position? You said the association's been around for 42 years. I know you've been around 42 years, but not in this role. So tell us what how you developed your expertise such that you were the natural fit for the role.
All right. Well, basically, I'm a United States Merchant Marine Academy graduate, a marine engineer by trade. I went to work at Newport News Shipbuilding right out of college. Basically, testing 688 class submarines was my specialty. I went from there up to Bath Iron Works for another 5 years, where I became a construction superintendent. Left there and actually went to work for a company that sold equipment to the Department of Defense, mainly the U.S. Navy, a lot of all-way equipment, firefighting equipment, just a lot of specialty, highly engineered products that the U.S. Navy met. In 2015, an opportunity came up where I was asked if I would take over this organization. I actually spent about 6 months shadowing the previous chairman just to make sure I could do the job, wanted to do the job, and I was the right fit for the job. And I checked all three of those boxes, and I've been, like I said, I've been gainfully employed since 2016 in this position.
And John, I don't have your the details of the positions, but would you say that you were you grew into some leadership roles there? When you say construction supervisor at Bath Iron Works, that what does that entail?
Basically, I was in charge of about approximately at the time 300 tradesmen, helping to build the DDG 53. We were just coming off the build of the DDG 51, which was a successful ship. Technically, it was, you know, a tough ship to build as any of the first of the class. Financially, So DDG 53, our motto was to make a better ship and make it in a lot less money. And we cut probably 40% of the price of that ship out just by mostly lessons learned and going back and looking how it was done on the DDG 51 and figuring out a way to do it better, trying to avoid the mistakes that happened to them. And it worked, and again, a lot of it was teamwork. I was very lucky at Bath Iron Works. I came in as an engineer and they put me right into their management development program. So I actually spent 3 months in all the different factors of the company. And when I became, construction manager, that helped immensely. Just being able to cooperate, get different sections of Bath Iron Works to cooperate, getting Bath Iron Works to cooperate with Soup Ship, with the Navy. It just, it was a natural fit for me, just being able to get along with people, being able to bring people together, to cooperate both technically and mentally. If you can't get along with the person across the table, it's tough to work with them. And I always try to do my best to prevent that from happening, meaning let's get along, let's get the job done, let's get out of here, let's go home.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that, John. As you know, we have audience members from other service backgrounds who may not be as intimately familiar with shipbuilding. So it's good to clarify that. I want to touch on the genesis of the association. I did not know that story, that it was lawyers sitting around identifying that bootleg parts was an issue. But what you're alluding to when you say that you're still doing the same thing is, I think, concerns about supply chains and the industrial base. Maybe you could just share some of your observations about what's happening in the current industrial base. We hear that it is contracting. You use the word consolidations, meaning some companies are partnering or buying one another or going out of business. You have a front row seat. What is happening?
Well, part of what's happening, like anything, you build a product and you have so many specifications you have to build that product to. In 1990, there was probably 50 specifications. That same product is probably being built today with 200 product specifications. That means you have 150 more data points to worry about. And that's everything from ITAR to greenhouse gases to how you treat your employees. There's just so many new constraints on people. And that's part of the reason why people are pulling out of the Department of Defense. They can't keep up with the demand on their time, meaning you now need a bank of lawyers to read your contracts. Would it be great if everybody sent out the same type of contract? And you'd know, okay, where's the juicy part of that contract and concentrate on that, versus you really have to concentrate on everything now, because anything in that contract that you're not aware of, it could, catch up to you later, and we don't want that to happen. Another one of the big things we're seeing right now, again, workforce. Where are we going to get the people to build our ships of the future? Where are we going to train those people? How are we going to retain them? I always see driving around help wanted sign, machinists, welders, electricians, truck drivers. The skilled trades is a key element of how we were going to continue to build good ships here in the United States for the U.S. Navy and Coast Guard. We need to develop that workforce. And right now, the Navy is doing a great job working with industry to try to do that, but we need more. We need the same things that are happening in Danville, Virginia, to be happening in Oakland, California. We need, industry, parents, schools, in the Navy, Coast Guard, all to be on the same team. We need to say, all right, we're going to create great jobs, great paying jobs that folks don't need to go to a 4-year or more education to make a good buck. Our goal is to make good products and also have a nice standard of living for the people that are building those good products. So again, one of those things we've been trying to work for with industry, with the government, and it has been working, but we need to do a lot more.
I want to come back to workforce development. It was actually the next on my list, but could we back up a second to the specifications you described? When you talk about, going from 50 to 200 specs to do the same job, and you described a few different types of specifications. Who has the authority to lay those specifications on industry? Does it come from the Navy or the Coast Guard or Congress, or is it all of the above, or who?
It's really all the above. I mean, the shipyards are giving inputs from the Navy. They're giving inputs from the Department of Commerce. They're giving inputs from the EPA, from Congress themselves. You know, there's a lot of things tugging at people's time to make sure that we build a safe product, a product that's defect free, a product that's actually delivered on time. It used to be, say 30 years ago, the big three were price, delivery, and quality. They still are the big three, but you have to also worry about all those impinging specifications. You have to worry about ITAR. You have to worry about, just making sure that all your employees are taken care of in the right way. You have to make sure there's equality, to make sure that our employees treat each other correctly. The sweatshops are out, even though we still keep hearing about them. We have to, worry that we not only have a good workforce today, but we have a good workforce 30 years from now. And that's what we're trying to do now is lay a better foundation so that the workforce in America is available to build our next series of combatants. And
I just want to close out on the specifications. We saw recently, within the last few weeks, there's a 60 minutes presentation again on the costs associated with defense parts and what the industry charges government. These specifications that you're describing drive cost, right? They contribute to overhead.
I couldn't agree more. Like I said, I made a presentation in Washington, D.C. about 15 years ago where I talked about how the specifications impact cost. And I brought up probably 15 cost drivers. Even one of them is called Seadrils. And basically that's technical deliverables for the product you're supplying. And on any given job, you could have 200 of these, and the 200 or more, it has to do with everything from shock, vibration, weight control, center of gravity, which are all super important and are needed. But there's a lot of things like reliability and, accountability and survivability, that a lot of it is, I'm not sure anybody looks at it, but we still have to go through the motions. You still have to give that information to your customer, and it costs money. Like I said, I made a speech about 3 years ago where I said, how do you save money on Seadrils? I said, you don't do them. And I'm not saying you don't do all of them. I'm just saying you cut out the ones that no one's using the data on. Concentrate on the ones that really count. You have to make sure that equipment can pass shock, can pass EMI, that is reliable. They're all important. But someone needs to give a good scrub to that list to make sure we're only doing the ones we need to do, especially on repeat jobs, because that's what happens. You'll do a piece of equipment for the CVN 79 and have to do the same paperwork all over again for the CVN 81, and you'll have new reviewers, and the new reviewers are going to come up with the new comments, and it's just a continuous loop where you're spending money. It's hard to bid how much money you're going to spend on some of these loops of qualification, and it's just important that we only do the ones that we really need to do.
John, jumping to workforce development, you mentioned Danville, Virginia. Tell us what you're talking about in Danville and why that's an example.
Well, down in Danville, they have a fantastic facility that has been around for at least 5 years. At least I've known about it 5 years, where they're basically bringing in students, and these are not all 18-year-olds. I actually spoke at their graduation 3 weeks ago. We had a 53-year-old graduate from the program, and it's basically an accelerated program. They're bringing these people in for 4 months, and they are every day they're doing whatever their trade is that they're training for, whether it be welding, machining, electrical. They even have admin type positions that they're training for. And after 4 months, they're coming out of there as superstars. And they have a huge, demand for quality people. And, these kids are coming out with good jobs, really good jobs. And it's important that people know that they're not only coming out as a technically qualified person, they're coming out with some of the soft skills too. They teach them how to deal with teams, how to work on a team, how to be the boss of a team, how to deal with the employee that sleeps in, how to deal with the employee who isn't pulling their weight. They get more out of that in 4 months than people could probably do in 3 or 4 years at a regular company. And that's if they're being trained every day at a regular company, which doesn't always happen because you don't always have the people to do that. But it's just a great program. And they're taking people who some, have nothing to do with the trade they're studying for. For example, one of the kids, and say kids, he was probably around 30 years old. He wanted to be a chef, a gourmet chef. He actually trained over in Paris. And then after he came back and was cooking for a while, said, I think there's something better. I just wasn't his forte. Well, he graduated like first in his class in welding, just really, really sharp kid. And he had the desire to learn. He didn't know how to weld, but he wanted to learn. And that's what they're looking for. We're trying to train that next group of hardworking people that our country is famous for, and make sure that they get the right training. So then they go to a position, they can actually hit the ground running and be productive employees.
In that Danville example, who pays for that? Does the individual pay? Is it state funded, federal funding?
It's a great program. What they try to do is get people from companies that are already working at a company. So the company is responsible for their salary, but all the training, all the living, all the lodging, all the food, I think they even give them a little fun money now and then, is all paid by the school. Now, the school is being, paid by obviously the state, the U.S. Navy. They have a lot of money coming in to help fund this school, and they're making it as painless as possible for the students to get through the program. They're even helping with babysitting and things like that when that's necessary. They're going above and beyond the call of duty to make sure that the students are successful.
Do you see programs like this populating across the country? I would imagine they have a regional focus.
Right now, larger companies have similar things. Newport News Shipbuilding, for example, has a fantastic apprentice school. But again, it's a couple-year program, 2 or 3 year program. But the kids that come out of the apprentice school at Newport News are sharp. They're going to be making a good wage right away. They have the opportunity to go finish up and get their bachelor's degree. And if they're really interested in school and have, the great mental ability to do it, they can even get their master's degree out of the apprentice school, which is really a great program. The pipeline project that started in Philadelphia is another example of great things are happening to make sure that we're meeting up. We're getting, again, students, schools, school administrators, and companies together, all working as a team to, again, promote and help develop our next generation of workers.
What do you see in the area of supply chains? We hear a lot about fragility in supply chains, and COVID pointed out areas across multiple industries where we might have some vulnerability or reliance on lengthy and international supply chains? What do you see?
Well, for decades, we as a country went to the lowest price supplier, and the lowest price supplier many times was overseas. Especially in electronics, chips. Even depending on how much it cost for freight, things like that. Even larger equipment was made overseas. It was just less expensive than in the States. And part of it is going back to those specifications. Do they really have a great OSHA program over in China? I kind of doubt it. Do they comply with all of the working conditions that we have? No. I mean, are they subsidized? Yes. I mean, so there's a lot of reasons why our prices are higher than theirs. That could end tomorrow. We go into conflict and the supply chain could get shut off. So that's why it's very important that we develop the supply chain in the United States and keep a robust, economy and a robust supply chain at the same time.
I've been commenting on readiness of late. I see indications that we have some readiness challenges. There have been some reports to Congress. There was a GAO report in May of 2023 that documented a decline in readiness. The Secretary of the Navy forwarded in June a report on the status of material inspections of ships. What's your front row view of readiness in the fleet right now?
Well, I mean, the fleet does a great job taking care of themselves, but at the same time, we're not playing by the same rules we were 20 years ago. 20 years ago, we had spare parts on the shelf. We didn't believe in just-in-time inventory 20 years ago, or now we do. Unfortunately, just-in-time doesn't always work when you're in a crisis. You need equipment on the shelf. If that submarine or that frigate or that destroyer or carrier breaks down, it needs repair parts immediately. We're bringing ships into the shipyards, and we don't always have all the repair parts on hand. And part of it is timing. Something breaks on the way into port, you don't know about it, you have to get it on order. But we need to do obviously a better job to make sure we stock the shelves with spare parts. That definitely is a huge part of readiness. We can get ships in and out of shipyards if they have the right equipment on site at the right time. And that's the key. And a part of that is planning. I think I was told a Fairbanks Morse engine has 40,000 parts. They make about 2,000 of them. So there's, 38,000 parts they need to be available to make sure that one of their engines has a problem, or even just a regular maintenance, that all those parts are available on time, at the right place, and at the right time.
What impact do you think uncrewed systems will have on solving readiness, helping us meet our national security needs, or on the industrial base?
Well, I certainly think there's great need for unmanned. There's jobs that we currently do that, an unmanned ship or aircraft would do a better job, or at the same time maybe cost us less money. Perfect example is this submarine that went down. 5 people on it. We just spent a whole lot of money trying to recover that sub. If that was an unmanned sub, what would we care? We'd be like, all right, we'll check it out the next time we're down in the next submersible. Just like trying to find downed fighter pilots. It's hard to get them back if they're in harm's way. You send in unmanned aircraft, unmanned boats, maybe it's a lot less, risky, a lot less, and then, have a self-destruct, thing on there in case they get caught by the enemy. But there's definitely tons of areas where unmanned is going to help us. There's still some issues with unmanned, obviously. How do you drive an unmanned ship during a hurricane where it's the skipper or the navigator on the boat who's the person who usually saves that boat, or sails you in a direction that doesn't necessarily agree with the computers and the radars and all the equipment. You have to make sure you do that in a safe and most logical manner.
What do you think?
And I'm just going to cut off for 1 second. I have a critter I have to get rid of.
John, if you were to flash forward 10 years, what is the Marine Machinery Association concerned with 10 years from now?
Well, obviously, we're concerned with the readiness of the country, the readiness of the industrial base. How is artificial intelligence going to impact us? That's the big buzzword these days, and it is going to impact us. And it's, obviously some of it's going to be for the better. We have to monitor it to make sure that the wrong people don't take advantage of it. We still have a lot of requirements out there that we have to be careful of and do it right. Cyber is another perfect example. We've been talking about cyber since 2016, and a lot of people are still confused as to how far they have to go, how much they have to spend, and where that belongs on their budget line item every year. Is it going to cost $50,000 next year? Is it going to cost $200,000 next year? For larger companies that already probably had a pretty good IT workforce in place, it's not as big an impact. But for the small mom and pops or companies under 50 or 100 people, cyber is a big impact, because now they're probably going to have a full-time IT person. They're going to have firewalls, going to have extra computers, separated networks, things like that. When you're only making, 8, 10, 12% profit, that money can go away real quick if you underestimate how much your cyber impact is going to be. That's just one example of where we're still not knowing how far it's going to go 10 years from now. We're going to have to be all in bomb shelters building equipment. We don't know. Obviously, global warming is having an impact, whether we like it or not. The weather is changing, and we have to make sure we account for that. A perfect example is the Norfolk Naval Shipyard. Is the Norfolk Naval Shipyard going to be the same footprint 10 or 20 years from now as now? We don't know. I mean, there's a lot of naysayers that say we need to start building up those piers to make sure it can handle the increase in, the water level. But how much do you do? There's still a lot of unknowns out there. And again, I think it's important that industry, when we see something that's being legislated, that we make sure everybody knows all the impacts of that legislation. I mean, people could have the best intent in the world, but then shut down the industrial base if the wrong rules are applied. So we just have to be very careful on new rules, make sure that Congress, the Navy, the industrial base, and NAVC are all on board together to make sure we do the job the right way.
John, thank you for sharing your insights. Really informative, and thanks for being with us today.
Oh, you're welcome, Gene. It was my pleasure.